Okay, so welcome everybody. Hello to Pervez and Imrana and all the colleagues who are joining in from the black hole side, other side of the horizon of the black hole. So I'm very happy to have Pervez here as a speaker. This year we are celebrating the centennial 100 years since Abdus Salam's birthday, highlighting both his scientific and humanitarian contributions and legacy with a series of lectures around the world and panel discussions. So this talk is the first centennial event hosted by the ICTP Global Science Portal, which is the community platform for members of ICTP, which now has reached, what, 4,000?
5,000.
5,000 already has reached, so I think I'm very happy with that growth. In fact, I should tell Pervez that I gave recently a talk just last week in India on the National Science Day at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. And the title was Scientific Temper in the Age of Unreason. So a theme which you can appreciate from the other side of the frontier, but similar issues on both sides of the frontier. So I have known Pervez now for many years, and he is very well placed to discuss Salam's impact on science in the developing world, but also to talk about his general thinking about faith and his global vision. Pervez is a nuclear physicist from Pakistan who graduated with his bachelor's, master's, and PhD from MIT. Then he has worked as a professor at several universities in Pakistan, like LUMS and Quaid-e-Azam University. He's a former ICTP associate and received also the Abdus Salam Prize for Mathematics. Among his many achievements, he developed and co-directed the World Laboratory Project on cosmology and high-energy physics in Pakistan. And he was also key in establishing the black hole, this activity that he has been pursuing. I had an opportunity also to be interviewed by Pervez in this context once. And this black hole is a community space in Islamabad for nurturing science and culture, so very well aligned with what ICTP does. He has authored several articles on his experiences with Salam, but also more broadly about the role of religion and science in society. He's, I would say, one of the fearless voices of reason in Pakistan, which is something that I can appreciate looking at it from this side of from India. Abdus Salam actually wrote a foreword to Pervez's book on Islam and Science, the Religious Orthodoxy and the Battle for Rationality. He is also UNESCO's Kalinga Prize winner for popularization of science and was included in the 100 most influential global thinkers list by Foreign Policy magazine. So I'm very happy to have Pervez here. Welcome, Pervez. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Atish, for this very kind introduction. It is really a privilege for me to be here and to give the first lecture of this series that you're planning. I would love to hear about your experiences in India, but that we shall wait for. So I was thinking about what to talk about. As this board over here shows, this talk is going to be about Abdus Salam's physics, his faith, and his global vision. So doing all three is quite a challenge, but let me begin with the first. If I was to begin with the first, of course, I should talk about his Nobel Prize work, the unification of the weak and electromagnetic forces, the use of symmetry breaking as fundamental to creating masses. I would then, if I was to talk of his greatest achievements, include the creation of superfields, and this made supersymmetry reachable, because if you were to do it otherwise, it would be an absolute mess. And superfields are Salam and Strathd's invention. I would also include the notion that the proton can decay, and the fact that Salam did this work with Pati, with Jogesh Pati from the University of Maryland, this set off a riot in terms of publications which closely mirrored that work, but also the experiments that followed looking for the decay of the proton, which unfortunately has never been found. I would also include his attempt, a very serious, very good attempt at predicting the breakdown of parity, and so that neutrinos are only left-handed, never right-handed. And these would be among his great achievements, but I will choose his very first achievement, actually second achievement. The first achievement was it was a good one, but it was a paper written on a problem of Ramanujan, which was nice, but I don't think it was very important. The very important one was his work on renormalization theory. So let me, this is for physicists and a lot of people here, I'm sorry, will in the audience over here may not understand. Well, who knows? But let's go to the 1950s. This was a great time for physics. This was when quantum mechanics had morphed into quantum field theory, and quantum field theory had enormous successes, pioneered principally by Feynman, Tomonaga, Japanese, and Schwinger, Julian Schwinger of Harvard. They had figured out how to have a system in which there are electrons and photons. And the level of accuracy was absolutely stunning. So the electron is a little magnet because it spins, therefore it's a little magnet, and they were able to calculate the difference between G and 2. So G minus 2 down to 12 decimal places, and that's what was found. That's 1950. Well, Salam was 24 years old then. He had gone to Cambridge to do his undergraduate, and he did his mathematical, he did his tripos in mathematics, and then he started doing his PhD with a professor of theoretical physics over there by the name of Kemmer. And Kemmer asked him to look at a problem that was a very difficult one. Let me explain a little bit about what the problem was. So this is a meson theory in which you have neutrons and protons, i.e. nucleons interacting with pions. Pions are mesons. And the fundamental interaction looks like this. So in terms of Feynman diagrams, what this corresponds to is, if this is a nucleon, then it spits out a pion like this. Okay, which is fine, no problem. This sort of stuff one can cover in first year graduate studies and learn how to deal with diagrams like this. But then what can happen is that this pion can land back upon the nucleon, and this corresponds to a mathematical expression which, if you evaluate, is infinity and makes no sense. What's worse is that this is not the only diagram. You could have this same nucleon go ahead and spit out another pion, and another pion, and another pion, and you've got to take multiple infinities into account. But that's not so hard. You can sum this sort of thing up. Okay. Now, I was telling you about quantum electrodynamics and the great successes it had. But then a lot of people started saying, you know, this is not going to work, because when you have nucleons and pions, then you're going to deal with diagrams which are far more complicated than this. Diagrams like this. So let me draw this. And inside that is another loop, and inside that is another loop, and you can see that this thing can go on. And these are what are called overlapping divergences. So when these, I mean, if you do quantum field theory, you can easily, you know, generate diagrams like this, but when you try and evaluate them, you get not only infinities, but infinities in convoluted with infinities. And dealing with these diagrams was so difficult that at one point, Freeman Dyson, he took up the problem, and there was nobody brighter than Freeman Dyson at that time. Well, perhaps Feynman, who knows. But Dyson gave up on this. And so famously, in his paper, where he attempted to solve this, he wrote, it seems as if this is not renormalizable. It seems as if these infinities cannot be tamed. That's the problem that Salam took up in his PhD thesis. And what he developed was a method by which you could write down a recursion relation. I'm not going to do that, it's all too technical and all that. But he developed a recursion relation which could sum up all the infinities and put them in one place. And then you can go and you can, as I say, renormalize the theory. As a consequence of renormalizing the theory, and this is what he became really famous for, was that he said, not only do you need this vertex, you need a vertex in which you have 4 pions coming together. And this is what gave rise to the 5 to the 4 theory, which now everybody learns about when they're learning quantum field theory. So 1951, so look, 1950 is when Feynman and Tomonaga and Schwinger, they conquer quantum field theory, renormalization. And here comes this graduate student, and he hasn't even finished his PhD at that point. That's when he goes to Princeton and he meets Dyson, and Dyson said, great job. I couldn't do it myself, but you did it. Well, after that, he became very famous. And he was then, then he was very famous. He wanted to continue working, but he said, okay, this was very nice, but I have to go back home. And that's when he went back to Punjab University. That's when he joined Punjab University and started teaching over there. But or was it government college? It was government college, yes, government college. So I got corrected by somebody who knows Salam, has met him also many times. Nair, age Nair here. So he went back to Lahore, and he found that there was just nobody he could talk to about quantum mechanics, about quantum field theory. And he said, okay, I'm going to start some lectures over here. And so a lot of people came to hear his lectures. Everybody dropped out except 2 people. One was Fayazuddin and the other his brother Riazuddin. And these were twin brothers, and they're very bright, and they went on to become excellent physicist. Riazuddin in particular was the student of Salam and had a major impact upon physics in Pakistan. But there was no future over there. He came back. And when he came back, there was no lack of opportunity for him. At this point, Hans Bethe, who got the Nobel Prize in physics later, and who had been very instrumental in making the bomb also, and absolutely he's a god figure in nuclear physics. Well, Hans Bethe recommended Salam to Blackett, who at that time was the head of the physics department at Imperial College London. And Blackett at that time was looking for expanding Imperial College. And that's when Salam was hired, I think at the age of 35 or so, as the first professor at Imperial College in the physics department, where he built up his group, which became an extraordinarily productive group. And so his fame spread, and he was asked to come give talks everywhere. But this is where he started realizing that, look, I owe something to my country. I owe something to where I came from. And at that point, he had become so well known that President Ayub Khan, well, Ayub Khan was a military general. He seized power in a coup in 1958. Ayub Khan started taking an interest in Salam. And so Salam entered into the Pakistani scientific hierarchy, in fact, rose to the top almost instantly. And he became the chief scientific advisor to General Ayub Khan, also President Ayub Khan. And this is when he started making his major contributions to Pakistan, which I'll come to in a bit, not right now. But now, let me tell you that so the first time I saw Salam actually was when I was 12 years old. And this was in Karachi when he had come to give a lecture on rocketry. He had at that time founded Suparco, the Pakistani space agency. And the way he did it was quite interesting because Ayub Khan told Salam, he said, look, I'm going on a visit to the United States and I'd like you to accompany me. And so Salam went along with him. And that's where he met President Eisenhower. He was in a meeting where Eisenhower was there. They were sitting around the table. And it's at that time that Salam said, President, Pakistan needs to go into space. It is something that would be very, very wonderful if the United States could help Pakistan get off the ground. And so at that time, the Americans were interested in one thing: how to get information on the Soviets. And one thing they wanted to know was how to map out the ionosphere. And they were launching rockets, meteorological rockets. This is how Pakistan got into getting rockets from the United States, and the space program began in 1962, I think. That's the year, actually, when I saw Salam, and there was about 400 people there in the audience, and he talked about launching rockets and mapping out the atmosphere. And then he said, any questions? Nobody had questions, so I put up my hand and I asked what was the thrust of the rocket. Then he said, a question at last. So that was my first encounter. But coming to now this path.
I've lost him for a second.
Did I hear something? Okay. So now coming to faith. Over the years, I became a member, an associate member of the ICTP. And in 1984, I went to ICTP and encountered Salam over there. And Salam at that time had read some essays that I had written. And this was the time when General Ziaul Haq had taken over Pakistan and started changing it and making everything totally Islamic, including science. There were conferences all across the country at that time in which faith and science were joined together. One particular one that I went to in 1984 was called Scientific Miracles of the Holy Quran and Sunnah. After which, I wrote a very scathing article and I gave my first public talk in Urdu. And then wrote that up. And somehow Salam got a copy of that, and so he wanted to see me. So when I went there, this was 85, I think, yeah. Salam said, he said, look, I've been reading what you've written, and I would like you to write a preface to a book that I've just received on scientific development in the Third World, which was, of course, something that was very close to his heart. It was by two scientists. One was Michael Moravcsik, and the other was John Zeeman. You know, the famous John Zeeman of solid-state theory. So I said, Professor Salam, I'll do what you say, but they want you to write it and not me. He said, fair enough, you can add my name, I'll look at it, and indeed he fixed it. So now I want to show you this aspect of Salam, his religious faith. And I'll tell you this because things have been very confusing. They've been confusing because in 1974, Salam's sect of Islam, it used to be a sect of Islam earlier, but then by an act of the Pakistani parliament, that sect was rejected and thrown out of the pale of Islam. I am, of course, referring to the Ahmadi Bill of 1974, which profoundly disturbed Salam. And since that time, he had become very religious, and in many of his speeches, he had woven science and Islam and the Quran very closely, intricately, to the point that once I gained some familiarity with Salam, I picked up the courage. Here's a very, very famous man, and you can't, and somebody that's 2 miles above you. So it took a lot of courage, but I said, okay, I have to do it. I said, Professor Salam, you're confusing a lot of people. That's how we got into this conversation. And now I'm going to show you some slides that are of relevance in this matter. So can we now have the projector? Zohaib, yaar projector laga do. Okay. So these the first thing I'm going to show you is from that preface to Moravcsik and Simon's book. Oh यार ये नीचे ये नहीं दिखाना मुझे. Yeah. Charlotte, can you see this? People on that side, can you read this?
Yes, we.
Okay.
Yes, it's fine. Thank you.
So this is towards the end of that review. I'll read this out. One can persuasively argue that science is the natural outcome of human intelligence. Rational man has emerged from the realms of biological evolution, endowed with innate mental structures capable of abstract thought, etc. Regarded in this manner, science pretty much had to develop sooner or later in the course of man's progress. And further on a cosmic scale, the history of knowledge and science is profoundly irrelevant, reminding us of the futility of parochial pride in the historical cultures which we accidentally happen to be associated with. That's pretty direct, isn't it? It's saying that religion doesn't have a whole lot to do with scientific progress. It's saying that, well, science happens because we humans are intelligent, and it'll happen anywhere, in any religion, in any country. And yet, when Professor Salam would come to Pakistan, he'd give lectures and I'd be there in at least some of them. And I found what he said was very confusing. So the next time I went back to Trieste, I said, Professor Salam, I'm writing a little book on Islam and science. The one that Atish just mentioned, Islam and Science, Religious Orthodoxy and the Battle for Rationality. I wrote it up and then I sent him a copy, the manuscript, with my request that he should write a preface. And I thought that he wouldn't write a preface, but he did. And so now I'd like to read out some part of that, because it's nowhere else has Salam made absolutely clear what he thought about the relationship between science and Islam. So let's see what he said, at least in one place, which is in this book. And now a little bit from the preface. There is no, so at the top I've highlighted, there is no question but today, of all the civilizations on this planet, science is weakest in the lands of Islam. The dangers of this weakness cannot be overemphasized, since honorable survival of a society depends directly on its strength in science and technology. And to my great astonishment, he said, in fact, I do not disagree with Dr. Hoodbhoy on anything he has written in this book. I stand by the quotation from my writings which appear at the head of this page and with which he opens chapter 4. I agree with him that religious orthodoxy and the spirit of intolerance are two of the major factors responsible for killing the once flourishing enterprise of science in Islam. In fact, Salam wrote extensively on this, and very inspirational and very researched writings. Then he goes on to say, there is only one universal science. Its problems and modalities are international, and there is no such thing as Islamic science, just as there is no Hindu science, no Jewish science, no Confucian science, nor Christian science. And this was, of course, a direct refutation of all the nonsense that was coming out from Ziaul Haq's attempt to merge science and Islam. He says, Abdus Salam says, I agree also with his contention that Islamic science, as set out by the late President Zia of Pakistan, was a fraud, and that its practitioners, whom Hoodbhoy rightly mocks, are or should be ashamed of what they have wrought in the name of science. Now comes something interesting. This came out of our conversation in Trieste. I said, Professor Salam, you were just at the Badshahi Mosque in Lahore, and you gave a talk about how you had been inspired into SU2 cross U1, looking at the minarets of the mosque and placed in that particular symmetry pattern. And yet you and Weinberg were working together. They wrote a paper with Jeffrey Goldstone in 1961. And you and Weinberg worked separately. You in Imperial College and at Trieste, and Weinberg at MIT. But he's an atheist, and you say you're religiously inspired. So how can this make sense? So he addresses that directly and says, I can confirm he is right. We were both geographically and ideologically remote from each other when we conceived the same theory of physics for unifying the weak and electromagnetic forces. If there was any bias towards the unification paradigm in my thinking, it was unconsciously motivated by my background as a Muslim. And then he goes on to summarize that I'd like to do this and that. This is how science should be fixed in Islam. Well, that fixing has yet to occur. I should say that Salam's greatest achievement was, well, there were two great achievements. One was, of course, the Nobel Prize. The other was the ICTP. But his greatest failure was to bring science to Muslim countries. He tried and tried, but didn't get very far. Saudi Arabia wouldn't allow him to enter the country because after 1974, they, in agreement with the government of Pakistan, had declared that Ahmadis could not be allowed for Hajj, Umrah, any kind of, they would not be allowed to set foot on the soil of Saudi Arabia. I don't know how it is now with MBS, but that's the way it was then. So I think this makes at least somewhat clear what Salam, how he viewed the relation between science and his religion, which was that he could be inspired by reading the Quran, and he'd read it, and okay, that's his business. He obviously got something out of it, but then he was very willing to work with peoples of other faith and people of no faith, like Weinberg. And you might think that his relationship with Weinberg was antagonistic, but it was absolutely the other way around. And I'm going to come to that in a bit. He also worked with Jogesh Pati, and he remembered with great fondness his teacher before partition. I forget his name, but he went to meet him and cried when he went there because of the old memories. So he was a very unique person in that regard. Well, that unique person has been attacked, sadly, savagely in Pakistan. But even before Pakistan, well, not before, but also at the same time, by those who were jealous of his achievements and frankly, where there was an element of racism as well. And now I want to come to the challenge that has now been blown out of proportion, and it originates. So let me go back over here. It started with a paper on archive in 2011 by Norman Dombey, who's a nuclear physicist. And at first he wrote to me and tried to get some dirt on Salam. And I didn't, it's too complicated for me to talk about here, but I didn't give him what he wanted. In this article, which was never published, but it's there on the archive even today, he makes his claim. His abstract says, Abdus Salam's correspondence during his time as director of the International Center for Theoretical Physics is held in the Abdus Salam archive. I use this correspondence to discuss his contribution to the theory of this and that. And he makes the claim that the Nobel Prize was undeserved. Note the date, 24th of September 2011. Now, quite accidentally, I chanced upon an article in the New York Times by Steven Weinberg. And when I read that, I was quite thrilled. Here is Steven Weinberg, born in New York, a Paka American, strong supporter of Israel, an atheist at the same time. He, well, because I'd taken a course in quantum mechanics from him a long time ago, I'd kept in contact with him. And so when I read that article by Weinberg, I wrote to him, I said, Steve, that was a terrific and very gracious article that you had written in the New York Times. I wrote to the Express Tribune in Pakistan, which is widely read as to whether they could reprint it. They said they cannot, but would be thrilled to do so if it was even a slightly bit different. So here I am asking you for a favor again. Forget about chromotherapy, that's some nonsense I don't want to explain. Salam's example is very important for Pakistan. There are multiple reasons. Plus, this will encourage Pakistani kids to think about physics. Changing just a few sentences will work, and Express Tribune will sort out matters with the New York Times. I know that you're fantastically busy, but it would be wonderful if you could steal the time from somewhere. And so, look, this is 15th of July, 2012, and on that same day because, you know, there's a time difference of 12 hours or so, Weinberg from Texas writes back, he says, Pervez, it's good to hear from you. Can this wait until August 14th? After that, I will have the right to have this published anywhere, and I would be glad to give permission to the Express Tribune for its publication. Well, we got that permission, but then the Express Tribune wouldn't print it. So sad, but that's where that stood. Since that time, there have been countless attacks. But here is Weinberg, the guy who was super smart. I mean, people look up to him as a kind of god, god of theoretical physics. So he was at that time what Witten is today. And here he is saying, look, Salam and we did it together. They worked on the particular mechanism, the Higgs mechanism. Glashow, who became very bitter later on, he said, no, it was my idea. But Weinberg and Glashow were also at each other's throats. They went to school together, by the way. But they were at each other's throats. And okay, so I've been through this. The last part of my talk is Pakistan and Salam. Salam, while he was with Ayub Khan, he founded all these institutions or helped develop and become what they became. So, Suparco, this I told you was a result of his direct interaction with Eisenhower at that time, came into existence because of that. Salam did not found the Pakistan Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology, but he was intimately involved with its design. That's a part of the Atomic Energy Commission, but also in agriculture. The idea that you could irradiate crops, that you could develop new species, that you could solve problems of waterlogging and salinity, all these obsessed him. And so his contribution was enormous. Sad to say, few people are willing to accept that idea. They are focused, unfortunately, on his religious beliefs. And so from his gravestone, you find the word Muslim missing. And these are not vandals who barged into the graveyard. This was by an order of the court. There is no institution in Pakistan that bears his name. There is no institution in Pakistan where we would be able to talk freely about Salam as here at the Black Hole. Why not? Why? It puzzles the mind. After all, there wouldn't be a problem if I went and spoke on Einstein or on Weinberg or on whoever. So Jews or atheists or Hindus or whatever, you could have even a talk on Subramanian Chandrasekhar. We've had such talks over here at the Black Hole. I went to Bangladesh just a year ago, where Shotendra Nath Bose, you know, the person bosons is associated with. Well, the Bengalis called him, although he was Hindu, but he was a faculty member at the University of Dhaka until he chose to go to Calcutta. But you can't do that over here. And that's craziness. And this is why, unless you have an open society, unless you have a society where merit is recognized, things don't look good. So on that sad note, I'm going to end over here. And hopefully we'll have questions from that end and hopefully from this end as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Pervez. Thank you very much. Okay, so just to start things off, we got one message from, so we've had quite a few people come in on Zoom, and we had a message from Zain Abbas, who said, thank you very much for the talk, so we really love the talk. So I'm going to see if I can take some questions from here. Here we go. So we've got quite a few people here. Have we got any questions for Pervez from the audience?
Yeah, but yeah.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Hi, do you want to come to the front so you can actually speak to him, maybe? So we can't. Okay, we've got one of our students. Okay, so you can speak to me.
okay. Thank you very much. It was a very informative talk, and it was very nice to hear your perspective on Abdus Salam's life and how things are in Pakistan, especially from a more academic and more scientific point of view. I wanted to ask, because Abdus Salam has also, is also one of those figures who did have to face a lot of persecution and a lot of, you might even say, other hurdles, sometimes even maybe racism and financial issues. And yet he managed to do something for Pakistan in specific, but ICTP is an example of it, that he did a global service to science beyond science. What would your, I suppose, suggestion would be for firstly young physicists and in particular young scientists from Pakistan? How do you think they can contribute to a significant level in the current climate?
Good, thank you for that question. The way you can contribute is first, become very good in your own subject. Rise as far as you can, and then come back. Find a place where you will survive and hopefully thrive, and then build something around yourself. This is the way that institutions have grown in India, and of course a lot will depend upon how you are viewed, and if you are lucky, you will find niches within this country where this is indeed possible.
Very much. Have we got any other questions, Heather? Okay, thank you very much.
Should we
can
take?
I ask you a quick question, actually? Can I ask you a quick question, Pervez?
So
I wanted to ask.
are there questions? Are you asking for questions from this end?
Well, actually, I was going to ask you a quick question, and then we
Okay.
were going to take questions from your end as well.
Yeah, okay.
So what is your lasting impression of Abdus Salam? Because you knew him very well. You had all these really interesting interactions with him. What are you left with as your strongest impression of him as a scientist and someone you knew?
As a scientist, absolutely superb. His lectures, okay, so I was never his student, but a lot of my colleagues, and most of them are dead now, they were indeed his students, and they said that he was a very strict person. He would he was not easy to understand because his level was such that he expected you to fill in the gaps. So that was one thing that I learned from them. I also learned from them that he had a major change of personality after 1974 when he became intensely religious, and that was the response, a natural response to being persecuted. Earlier on, in terms of his personality, he was, I'd say, much more relaxed about the way in which he viewed the world. I was also well impressed by how he navigated the ICTP in times of distress. He had connections everywhere, in Italy, with people at the very top, and with influential people like Antonino Zichichi. So I'd say he was a cultural amphibian. He could be in the water or out of the water. He could go between cultures without a problem. That is, I think, something so essential for somebody who wants to do something beyond his narrow personal achievements, professional achievements. Because look, frankly speaking, there are bigger scientists than him. But they have not left institutions the way that he has. Nobody else has created something that comes even close to the ICTP.
Okay, thanks very much, Pervez. Oh yeah, we've got another question over here. Do you want to come up? Yeah, we've got one more question for you.
Sir, it was nice hearing your talk. I'm Praveen, I'm from India. My question is that coming from that part of the world, how do you see the future? How would be the religious science interaction? How the influences, would it be diminishing over the course of time, or it would be increasing? Thank you, sir.
Okay, a difficult question. You know, right now it is next to impossible for me to go to India. There are so many Indian friends I would love to meet. And by the way, they're dying at at a rate that leaves me scared that the next time I go to India, if I do, that is, I won't have any friends in the scientific community left. I met so many of them at ICTP, and we became lifelong friends after that. We, once internet came along, we'd communicate that way. We used to have conferences, and in this regard, my friend Fahim Hussain, who died in 2009, sorry, he had an extraordinary number of friends there who he would invite over to Pakistan. In terms of the future, well, look, India now is in a very different class from Pakistan. Although we are the same people, I do believe we are the same people, and yet, because of different attitudes towards knowledge, the inability of Pakistan to create genuine scientific institutions, I fear the gap will become so great that there will be nobody on this side with whom there will be an Indian colleague to talk to.
Okay, Pervez, there is a comment from Professor Anna Constantini. She is from Italy. She said that thank you for this very interesting talk. I was in the ICTP many times and had the opportunity to have lunch with him 2 times. However, I did not know the many problems he was faced. So this is Professor Anna Constantini. Then there is another question from Zainab Aftab.
Well, yes, Professor Anna is spot on. Salam, unfortunately, we could never even invite him to our university, Quaid-e-Azam University in Islamabad, where Abdul Nahir Hamid, who's sitting over here in the audience, and I taught for close to 40 years. We could not invite him there.
So there is another Zainab Aftab. Do you think in the coming years we can expect students from Pakistan/South Asia to be like Abdus Salam and thrive, seeing that times have changed?
There are always people who lie at the end of the bell spectrum. And you can never say when a genius might pop up somewhere. So let's not foreclose that possibility. But the quality of science education in Pakistan is so low that this cannot happen in any mainstream organization. It conceivably could happen if there were 2, 3, 4 high quality science, mathematics, physics institutions that were functional. But even that is not the case.
Okay, there is another quick question. What personal habits or routines did Salam have that contributed to his creativity and productivity?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. What?
What personal habits?
Yeah. Well, he was a very hard worker. And this is from the time that he was a kid. He was amply rewarded for being hardworking, and so this grew into a habit. Plus, there's something. Look, a lot of people are hardworking, but he, while working hard, kept his eyes open, and he looked around and he saw. He said, "The world is not just for me; it's for people who are for everybody." People like me and people who are not like me. And so in this regard, he did things for people outside of his religion, outside his country. And so in that sense, he was a true universalist.
We had one question from Atish. We had a question from Atish right now.
Good.
Hi, Pervez, I have a question for you. I mean, since you have seen ICTP over the years and Pakistani science over the years, what do you think ICTP could do to help Pakistani science compared to what we used to do before? I mean, I sort of know, for example, with respect to India, I just returned from a very productive visit to India, and I know how ICTP should change its orientation with respect to India, and I'm quite optimistic about how we will go forward. What do you think ICTP can do differently to sort of help Pakistan go through this phase that it currently is in?
I wish I had, that's a great question, Atish, and I wish I had a good answer to give to you. Let me say, I'm very happy at the way ICTP is going under your leadership. I saw how many different things you've added on, how you have extended ICTP's reach in many places. So you are doing what you can, and it's excellent. What can you do that you haven't done before? Let me think about it. I'll write you an email. Right now, I can't. I can't think of anything. But maybe people over here can. Folks, what do you think can be done for Pakistan, which is not being done already? Should we? Okay, so hang on. Get the mic.
Well, ICTP has Physics Without Frontiers program, and I think there should be more of those conducted in Pakistan.
Can you be more explicit?
Yeah, there's a Physics Without Frontiers program of ICTP, and they conducted in like countries like Afghanistan and Thailand and everywhere. So in Pakistan, their frequency is less.
It's a very good suggestion, and it's a very successful program. And I think the people who run this program will be very happy to learn this. I'm also glad to tell you that we have been receiving funding from important scientists for supporting this Physics Without Frontiers program. Because we have our limited budget, but actually some of the scientists, our colleagues in the US, have recognized its importance. So, okay, hopefully we can do more on that front, because I think you're right, because it addresses the need of getting young students excited about science at an early stage. And that's perhaps a big need in Pakistan currently. Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you.
Can I add a comment on that? Because this year on Atish's initiative, I sent a proposal to Physics Without Frontier, and we have two activities, two workshops, one in Mardan Women's University and the second in Sawabi Women University next month. But the date is 30th March to 2nd April for the first in Mardan, and the second is on 30th April to 16th April, 4 days, extensive courses in quantum optics and quantum electronics, and with hands-on activity. So yes, we do these activities much more than this. Thank you.
So there's a question from here or a comment?
I have a question to Pervez, in fact, two. First, you know that this year the National Center of Physics celebrated Salam's centennial. And even though we know that it's an institute under the establishment of Pakistan, but still that happened. And even though you were not invited, you being the person who has the closest association with Salam in the scientific community in Pakistan. But do you think there is a softening on the establishment's stance towards Salam? I also have noticed in other places that he's being more talked about, his contributions are being more recognized. In my university, ComSats, for example, that happened at our 25-year celebration. So that was my first question. The second one, I would like to know about Salam students, apart from Professor Riazuddin, any prominent students and their work.
Good. About the softening, I do not see that. I do not see any mention of him in any newspaper. He is totally absent from our school books. And you will remember that just a few weeks ago, this black hole auditorium was absolutely full of high school students. And we had shown this film, this YouTube documentary called The Quantum Indians, at the end of which, so these were people like C.V. Raman and S.N. Bose and Chandrasekhar. And at the end of the movie, I asked them, I said, if you were to produce a movie on the quantum Pakistanis, who would you include in that? And none of them had any clue, but then one of them stood up and said, he put up his hand and he said, sir, wasn't there some Abdul Kalam? I said, Abdul Kalam was the president of India. He was called the Missile Man, and you don't even know Abdus Salam's name. So I unfortunately don't see any softening, but maybe people over here have better, sharper eyes than I do. As far as his students go, the famous ones, the very famous ones, well, among them, I would say Yuval Ne'eman is the first. Ne'eman, who used group theory in the same way that Salam did, and he predicted the omega minus particle, 3 strange quarks. He became Israel's defense minister, by the way. But apart from him, there's Michael Duff, there's Qaiser Shafi, there's somebody who went into biology and then got the Nobel Prize in biology. So all sorts of famous students he has had. Next question. Is there another question after this? Okay. Charlotte, are we done, or is there?
I'd say we're almost done, but there's still some, we're very, very nearly done, but there are a couple of questions still from the group chat because people have been adding these. So just to quickly say, a great talk by Pervez, as always. I owe it to him for a career in particle physics, QCD, and hadron physics. I hope we hear from him more often. Thanks to him for his great efforts in physics education in Pakistan, his research endeavors, and bringing scientific and rational enlightenment to Pakistani society. So that one was left. And then there's another one. Quick, just a last question. I think this might be the last one. Do you think it's better for an aspiring physicist to have interdisciplinary degrees in Pakistan? I think this refers specifically to Pakistan. Or maybe a degree also in computer science. Does that make a better scientist or physicist?
Is a physicist a better scientist or a computer scientist? Is that the question?
I think the question is, basically, as far as I understand from the question, is it better, does it make you a better physicist to also have some training in computer science and maybe some other disciplines?
Well, if you think of computer science as discrete mathematics, then yeah, it would certainly help you in some areas of physics, particularly graph theory, which is really an integral part of computer science. But if it's coding, no. What about neural networks? Will that make you a better physicist? Here, I think there'll be a sharp difference of ideas as to what physics is about. Is physics about exploring the natural universe, or is it exploring ourselves, in a sense? So, of course, things have gotten intermingled with each other, but I'd say that they are still very distinct disciplines. Yes, I know neural nets are now being used to analyze particle data and even to validate certain things at CERN So interpreting the data over there in hadron-hadron collisions. But does that make you a better physicist? I'd like to ask Atish that question. Atish, what do you think?
I will send you an email.
We'll all send emails. Okay. Thank you very much, Pervez. That was a fantastic talk. It was so interesting, and I'm so glad to thank you everyone for the questions and answers. Very well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.